Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, good morning, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is Cognitive, episode 239. I'm calling this one a quiet space because I'm hoping to create that. I've already had to re-record this once because it's a bit challenging to do in face of recent events. But we're going to try, kids. We're going to try. And I'm recording this on Tuesday, June 24th at 8:26 a.m. So everybody cross your fingers. Yay. First of all, your comments are welcome. Please comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or feel free to comment in our group on Ravelry. I do want to just say the usual heads up, I'm not adding you to my follower groups on social media because I just get robo accounts and I get attacked by people who represent a certain element you can guess. In the meantime, let's get on to the warm thanks. Well, everybody's been kind of quiet this week, so I'm just going to thank my community overall. That is most of all the people in this group, everybody who's listening to me, the people who keep in touch. I also want to thank the people who are on my social media and who are regularly sending me kind of cheerful stuff because I've needed it lately. This is sort of a shout out to On Your Bike Somerton and On Your Trike Somerton because they constantly send me these happy videos about terribly British things. And On Your Bike and I happen to share a regard for the King of Britain right now. So he used to drive me crazy. In the 80s when I lived in Britain, I thought Prince Charles was just such a jerk. Except he had these strange insights at the time. Like he was environmental before anybody else noticed it. And I actually quite like him as king. I didn't expect that. Not that anybody cares what one little Yank sitting in Southern California thinks of the King of Great Britain, but right on, King Charles. I'm not sure about your taste in women, but apart from that, all right. Meanwhile, it's none of my business. Who cares what I think of their government? Particularly, people in glass houses right now, ... All right. Meanwhile, you can also see my two finches if you want to join my finch community. We do have the number. Normally, I actually don't see it in these notes, but you can see my two finches and you can join at least, I think I had Courage's number in the last episode, but they are together. They are sitting in Courage's cabin in the snow. Now, this is a little weird because at the time I took this image, this screenshot, I think one was in London and one was in Rome. However, as you can see, I started finding all this camping stuff in my purchases area in the shop. And thought, yeah, why not? So I made a winter cabin, and they are both there, toasty warm. You cannot see, but behind Forthright in the pink bathrobe, you can see a little bit of a fireplace. And I could not resist that. But I have not yet gotten the wallpaper that looks like the inside of a tent. So they're in a cozy cabin with their sleigh bed and their very weird pets and hanging out there. But they both have teddy bears and bathrobes. Do you care? No, let's move on. CFR 11. Is scheduled for October 11th, 2025. I believe I said that we're going to start the sign-ups on July 1st. They're open. If you've come, if you've never come before, anybody who wants to come is welcome. Tell your friends. This is going to be a much more low-key one. So far, I have not invited any vendors. I probably will because I wasn't planning to. I thought, let's just downscale this. Because last year, we only had I think we had like 30 people instead of our usual 50 or 60. And I thought, all right, maybe we should just downscale this because that's what happened. Last year, it got very intimate and friendly, and we ended up doing a lot of activities like mutual makeup, I think. I'm trying to remember. Oh, one woman was doing braids for people and braiding yarn into their hair. We had so much fun. It was more like this girly sleepover than any previous CFR I've ever hosted. So I don't know. And people said, can we keep it intimate like this? I am going to keep it at 50 people if we can get them. We're not hearing from the hotel because we didn't bring in 50 people. So they weren't as interested in hosting us this year, but I'll call them and see if we can get any kind of a discount rate. So hopefully we'll be doing that. If you would like to lead a group, teach a class, also we had a few people representing companies. If you have something you want to vend, let me know. Or we had one person who was representing ChowGoo. Please let us know, because we'll give you time to do your shtick about why you should buy ChowGoo. I happen to be a big fan of ChowGoo needles. If I don't like what you're selling, I'm not going to humiliate you. I'll tell you privately. But so far, we've only once, I think in our second year, we had a woman who was selling her knitted objects. And it was odd. And I told her, these are knitters. They don't need to buy your knitted objects. She came and she sold, and she didn't get anywhere. But we hosted her. I think I did it for free because she was somebody's mother. And I said, sure, sure, why not? We're supposed to be full of goodwill. Apparently I've got an upset collie. So what's on my hooks and needles? Well, nothing is finished. And I have a lot of small projects, including mending that I'm just not really getting to, that I wanted to do this summer. So I am trying to instead limit myself to finishing one big project that I've already started and finishing a small project. So the current small project is, you guessed it, another emotional support chicken out of sock yarn, because I am just enjoying the heck out of making these. I cannot figure out why. There's very few patterns I've ever wanted to do 3 times in a row. Socks are, of course, the great exception. And even with sweatering, I tend to vary a little bit so I don't get bored. But I am enjoying the ESCs. They're a good way to get rid of sock yarn. They're also a really good way to get rid of stuffing. Because our buddy Steffi Jo last year was moving, and she brought this enormous bag of polyfill, and nobody took it, which I find simply weird. I guess I'm the lone amigurumi type around here. So I have been ripping through that bag of polyfill and emptying out my polyfill supplies by doing these chickens, because they do take their fair share of polyfill, even the little guys. If you're wondering, the original emotional support chicken is in an Aran weight, and I believe it's an acrylic yarn, to be honest. And it's a good thing, because that, if you have a moth issue, and we do have them once a year as a sort of part of our natural desert life cycle here. But the sock yarn chickens are about, somewhat about half as tall as the worsted weight or Aran weight chickens. And otherwise, in volume, they're probably about 1/3. And so they're actually a really, really nice size when you use up sock yarn. I'm sort of surprised at how well that worked. I didn't see that one coming. So I'm very fond of these guys. And for my big project, of course, I'm trying to finish up a crochet project, this September sweater, because it's really needed to be finished up. I have not worked much on the sweater this week because I haven't had just sort of routine downtime to do a popcorn stitch project. I like to have at least one project that is popcorn knitting or popcorn crochet that doesn't take a lot of thought. So right now that's the September sweater, because really it's just 4 big blocks of crochet. Hopefully we'll get those wound up. I know you're probably thinking, why don't you just finish the Virgo sweater? You've got a sleeve and a half left. I suspect that's the next small project to go along with a big project. But I just save the summer when it's too hot to have big projects in my lap for these little tiny things. And, well, we can see how that's going. But if you want to see how far I've gotten on this emotional support chicken, this time around I decided to do the little pieces first. So you can see the wattle and the comb in the middle there in reddish yarn. And on the right, there's the tummy panel. And on the left, there's the first half of the tail. So, basically when you do this pattern, you start at the tail feathers. You do 2 sections of tail and crochet them together or sew them together. And then you work your way forward and get this big body piece. Then you do the comb, the wattle, and the belly. So I reversed that a little bit because those little pieces make me crazy after I've done the big piece. I thought it would be easier to do it backwards. We shall see. Meanwhile, I haven't done much else. I am still working on that second braid of camel hair silk. in dizzy blondes in my spinning. Yes, that is taking forever, in case you're wondering, because I've really just done it a little strand at a time. It spins up super thin, which is great, and I'm debating whether this time I'm going to blend 2 strands of it with the BFL that I have yet to spin from Lisa Souza. Very, very pretty. I've also toyed with just chain plying it into a triple and then looking at it and saying, do I want to just leave this alone or do I want to blend this with a BFL? This is all on my electric eel 6.1 spinning wheel. Okay, kids, let's get on to a strategy. Now, this week, I was just thinking about what it means to be in the middle of Pride Month and all the various ways I've heard this addressed. From both sides, to be fair. All right. And it led me to think about the idea, what is individualism? We're all individuals and we're just fighting for ourselves versus a person who is living with their individual values, who is preserving a value system. And I think perhaps in America we've confused these two things a bit. We are an individualistic culture. Having lived in a more communal culture in Scotland, I still find American individualism a bit peculiar because, look, once you've lived in a country with socialized healthcare, you don't understand a country that doesn't have it and yet is as affluent as America is. It just is incomprehensible to me that Americans don't demand this. And there's a lot of other things I used to love in Britain. Like, there was a joke when I was in Britain that if you want anything, you get in the queue. You get in line. So, you'd go to a bus station and there'd be a long line at the bus station and nobody would ever jump the line except American tourists, which the British were fast to comment on, and I don't blame them. It must look incredibly gauche to them, very weird and rude. Okay, but the difference, I guess, is Americans have a kind of me first logic, that is individualism. But there's another logic of the individual, and I think this applies more to things like Pride Month, Black History Month, Women's History Month, where you talk about, I have a value as an individual because I bring something unique to the table. And from that perspective, you have to live your values. Now, you will recognize this from the times I've talked about acceptance and commitment therapy. That in ACT, you have the 6 points of the hexagon, as my buddy Professor Stephen Hayes would say, and these are the things that bring people to therapy. And interestingly enough, one of them is I have a set of values, and my values are being brought into collision with each other. And the values themselves are a guidance system. And in every culture, your values are an individual thing. There's going to be variations in your values from person to person. But the values are what you use to make a decision when context and authority, that is, people who you think would know more than you, when these other things are not working out for you. In other words, you have to have this internal guidance system. When you don't know what else to do, you use this internal guidance system. And I think you can probably find this in every major religious faith for the people who are practicing it honestly. Because, there's a lot of warping of religion to serve the needs of people in power. Or not the needs, but the desires. But I honestly think most religious systems at their heart are trying to achieve something good. And if you dig down to that, you find the value system. So I happen to be in a system that says, at the end of the day, you're either choosing love or you're choosing fear when you're stuck. And you have to keep choosing love. That would be the core value. And I think a lot of major faiths would say something like this. So when you don't know what to do, you have to resort to your own values and say, am I being consistent with my values? Now, where this goes off the rails is the sort of do unto others as they do unto you logic. That's revenge. Okay? And the problem there is often if you do that, you may feel you're entitled to strike back because they struck you first. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, where's my value system in this? So in other words, I'm going to use the most basic example, and that is somebody hits you, you just hit them back. And the logic is, well, based on justice, I should be able to do that. They hit me, I hit them back. The answer is yes, but do you want to be a person who walks around hitting people? Now, that's a complicated question, because there are moments where you have to fight back, where you're defending somebody who's helpless, whatever. So none of these questions are simple. This is why it is hard to preserve individual values. There's a famous picture from the civil uprisings based on race in America in the 1960s. A young black woman is basically throwing herself across an adult white male Klansman who's been beaten to the ground, and she's defending him. Now, that's a really great moment in terms of value studies, because she's got one value, protecting herself and those who she perceives as her people, other people with black skin. And she has another value of, we don't hurt a helpless person. And at that moment, you can see the values may well be in conflict for her. Which one do you choose? And she makes a decision based purely on the greater value of love, of simply not allowing brutality. And a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but that picture is still considered an icon in American photography, because it is this really stark representation of a person acting with extreme courage in the face of violence from both sides to protect the helpless. It's an astonishing moment of a person choosing between two competing values, and it's a darned hard choice, and anybody looking at the picture feels the sort of conflicted feeling of that choice, no matter which way you go on that one. I happen to think she's doing a heroic thing. And that's what it's about. There's individualism where you say, me first, I win, everything is for me. And of course, that becomes antisocial behavior. I win because I want to win, because I should win all the time. That actually doesn't work in a communal society. That damages other people in the long run. And then there's a different type of individualism that is, I have values, I live by my values, even when I have to stand up and be brave to stick to my values. I am living to my values. I am going with something I believe in. I think when you look at someone, well, let's go back in American history. You look at President Franklin Roosevelt. The guy's a millionaire in the 1930s, going through the year of the Great Depression. This guy is fabulously wealthy. He becomes president. He institutes taxes to pay for social systems to help the poor. That's a guy defaulting to his values. Even though he's wealthy and he will pay more in taxes, he defaults to a greater communal need. Gets called all sorts of things for that, communist, everything else. And yeah, I would argue that was a form of socialism, but I'm really grateful for it. It's kept a lot of the elderly and the disabled off the streets in America. It's given them relatively safe homes, So the question here is, when you look at something like Pride Month, it's easy to start saying, well, I disagree with who you are, blah, 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 and my rights first. And I think when you have a group that is a population minority, and you're saying they simply can't be who they were created to be because you have some value, I would question whether you should look at all your values. Because I think, first of all, you might be ignoring some of them pretty flagrantly. But also, I think it's important to realize that when you watch something like Women's History Month, when you watch a demonstration of women demanding safety, which we did right after Trump got elected the first time. There was a huge women's march all over America. And the question there is, what are they doing? And they're appealing to your human value of live and let live. And don't interfere with people who are not interfering with you. Instead, they're appealing to a communal value. We can all live together peaceably. And it's important when you're looking at these situations not to blur that line, not to say, well, they are too individualistic. They don't get to be who they are. It's important not to blur that line with, this is my value, and my value supports a greater good. So I hope I'm making sense. But I think what I'm really trying to say here is, be who you are based on your values, based on your commitment to behaviors that support the greater good. Do not say, I'm myself because this person hurt me, so I get to hurt them back. If that's your value, you have a problem. And the real issue is, the problem is if somebody hits you and you think they should not hit you, when you hit them back, you are becoming them. You are acting with their values. Use your own values. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. And yes, there's my FinChat number if you'd like to join me. I believe you'd be on Courage's Friendship Trees. Green Fingers, nothing much going on there. I just have not had the time to do much gardening, which is a bit sad. Oh, shoot. Well, I didn't go hiking LA last weekend because we had so much else going on. However, I do want to point out we got our race pictures from the Sugar Daddy. And of course, my son's pictures are great. My pictures, well, Cellulite Express coming through, kids. That's all I can say. I don't have a lot of vanity about this, although I do like to be in a good race picture. But I'm not that picturesque as a 64-year-old runner. I have to say, though, I like my race pictures just because they show I'm still out there. And I'm very pleased about still being out there in my 60s. I also thought that it's time to do another running gear check. For those of us who want to get out and exercise successfully, whether it's running or some other outdoor exercise, or perhaps gym stuff too, to be fair, I thought I should tell you some of my recommendations. I have a pretty complicated set of running gear because I am a woman who runs alone. And I have to be realistic, I frequently get attacked in some form. And attacking goes the whole range from people aiming their cars at me, potentially lethal, to just verbal interruptions. I do not know why it is. If I go running by myself, people think they should stop their cars and talk to me, even when they're being friendly. I don't know what it is, because my male friends who run, people don't talk to them. They just run. But when you're a woman and you run, people have to stop their car and talk to you. And it is nice. I don't consider this an attack, but it has the potential for attack. There are people who have threatened me from their cars routinely since I've been running since 1970. Yes, kids, I was a 10-year-old kid going up the road and people were threatening me. Really impressive. So if you're a woman and you're out there alone, you're going to hear some reference to that. But I'm just going to start the top down, and you can hear I'm not going to do my whole collection of things I wear. I'm just going to do, starting at the top down, we'll get down to my wrists. And we will ignore my torso, I believe. So in terms of what do I wear on my head, I wear a tennis visor from Roadrunner Sports in hot weather to let my head breathe a little bit. But as I age, I find it increasingly important to have some kind of protection from the sun, including the sun beating down on my eyes if I run towards the east in the morning. Often by the end of my run, I have taken off my tennis visor because I'm running towards the west as I head towards home. And I will have the visor hung over my running belt. So I like the tennis visor idea because it gives you a sunshade, but you can also take it off and hang it on your belt. In the winter, I use a baseball cap, generally a dark colored baseball cap, because my head gets cold and I want to absorb heat. And that's a very straightforward thing. Also, you can hang the baseball cap off your belt as well if you use the very back of it, the little hole in the back. So these are both from Roadrunner Sports in a pinch. I actually just use an old baseball cap. I believe it has woobles on it. Over my ears, and this is important, this is a safety issue, you have to have open earphones. And by the way, there's links to the places I'm getting this gear in the show notes. I happen to use the Shocks Open Move Bone Conduction headphones. Technically, I don't. My Shocks are older. The company used to be called Aftershocks. They've gone through a few company name changes. I use their least expensive model. It's about $80 currently. And it works just fine. They have a pro model, blah, blah, blah. The important thing about the Shocks models, they do not block your ears. They hanging over your ears, and then there's a bone conduction piece that hangs against the bones of your temple in front of your ears. This means your ears are unblocked and you can hear things. This is especially important biking, running, walking outdoors, because you can hear people approach you. And also, if you're on the road, cars are quieter now. Electric cars, hybrid cars, you often do not hear them very well till they're quite close to you. So no, I do not wear anything that sits in my ears, whether it's AirPod types, earbud types, or any kind of wire that has pieces in my ear, or over the ear phones that cover my ears completely. I do not wear those. I consider those unsafe for this type of exercise. Even if I'm running on a closed trail through the suburbs, because our area has a lot of those, particularly in the Santa Clarita Valley, we've got a very good trail system. I don't wear those, because even on a trail, you can get hit by a bike who's going too fast. And now we have e-bikes out there, and some of them are going a little faster than conditions warrant on the trails. They're not terribly unsafe. I don't have a grudge against them. But you really want something that does not block your ears. I use the shocks. For my eyes, I also use prescription sunglasses. I would tell you, get good sunglasses if you're going to be outdoors running or biking or hiking. Don't get the cheap dirt sunglasses. Get something polarizing if you're going to be out there for time, because you really do need to protect your eyes from harsh sunlight, particularly if you live in a place like Southern California, anywhere in the South where you have intense sunlight. So yeah, I use prescription sunglasses. I do not use trifocals. My sunglasses are simply my regular long-distance glasses. Going down my arms, I do wear a smartwatch. In my case, it's an iWatch. It's an old version because you don't have to keep updating iWatches, even though they encourage you to. I bought my first one. I'm on my second one. My first one, basically, I retired when the software was no longer supported. I do still have it on my desk with an old iPhone that supports it. That's my backup phone system in case of problems. But no, you don't have to keep updating your smartwatch. Most of my apps are selected because they work with the iWatch. I am not up to date on apps you use with Android watches, but I have no problem with that. I'm just using the iSystem right now because that works best in my job. That's my left wrist. On my right wrist, I'm wearing a road ID. I have said it before and I will say it again. You should always wear a form of visible ID when you're out exercising. You just don't know what can happen out there. I've been wearing road ID since the company was founded, and that was after I was marathoning. I believe I was still running half marathons when road ID came out. Before that, I had dog tags with my information around my neck. I recommend this not because I'm morbid, but because stuff happens, and it's really kind of unpredictable. And if you can't speak for yourself, you want anybody helping you to have basic information about you, your name, where to find help for you. I have my husband and his phone on it as a contact number. I have my blood type. I have the fact that I'm a diabetic and that I do not use insulin on it. You know, there's some vanity stuff. I have a little tag that says 26.2 because I'm that kind of ham bone. And yes, don't run marathons. It's really bad for you, but I'm very proud that I've done it. It's true. Okay, but I would tell you, anybody, including teenagers, anybody, no matter how healthy you are, you should be wearing a road ID or some type of ID if you're outside exercising. You know, heaven forbid, if you get hit by a bike, if you get heat prostration and you feel too sick to go on, people should be able to get you help. That's just common sense. Finally, on my hands, I wear crocheted fingerless gloves. I call them crocheted middies in the show notes. If you want to see those, go to my Ravelry account at Gemma DW. I make a few pairs of these every year. These are incredibly fast and easy to crochet. They're very good to have around. There's a million basic patterns. In the winter, I wear knitted mittens, that is, not fingered gloves, but mittens, over my crocheted middies for extra warmth. If I was running in a cold neighborhood, I would definitely be wearing mittens in the winter. Now, the fingerless is because I still want access to my phone, so I can always pull off the mitten and have the midi underneath to keep my hand warm, but use my fingers. If you pay attention, there are yarns out there that are conductive that will allow you, if you knit or crochet them into the fingers of gloves or mittens, they will allow you to use your phone and keep your mittens on. I have not tried these because I simply have not explored making gloves with fingers in any format. I'm happy with the system I have. Maybe when I'm retired, I will consider that more worth my time. So that's my running gear check for this week, and that's basically what's on your head and down your arms. Hopefully next week I'll talk about what's on your torso. But I just wanted to give you an update on that. If you want to be out there and you want to exercise, I thought I'd give you my recommendations. Upcoming, I am heading towards the red, white, and blue 5K. This is a Better World running. So no shirt. That's good. I have a couple shirts I bought for myself that I'm holding off on using until I do this. I get a reward shirt every time I run a race without a shirt. So I'm looking forward to that. And the next one after that is going to be up in Tehachapi, the Mountain Gallop, on August 16th. That's a mini vacation where I go up to Tehachapi, spend 2 nights in a hotel, and run up there because it's cooler in August. It's just a break from the routine. In the meantime, in the fluffy books, I am still listening to My Lady Jane, which is still morbidly funny. The reader is excellent on this. I have to tell you, if you're going to listen to this versus read it, this is one of the best narration jobs I've ever heard on Audible. That narrator is really reading with her whole heart and soul. So I can't recommend it enough. I'm also at night listening to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The reader is okay on that one. I like it because she puts me to sleep. But it is interesting. It's not off-putting. That I enjoy just listening to the narrative as well. It's a very, very interesting book. This is a smart writer with a good style. I like her writing style. She's a very complex and verbal writer. She's got a lot of really good vocabulary. You know, she's not just dashing this off. There's a lot of thought. There's a lot of style in this. I'm enjoying it immensely. In terms of what I'm actually reading, I've realized I've got a whole bunch of series that I follow, usually historical mysteries, and it's summer, so they're downloading new episodes. So I'm trying to catch all that up and collecting those books. Hopefully I'll get to those. Something I really like, well, I'm updating the Proton. So when July comes, I will be ready to load up probably episodes 141 to about 170, 175 for July. So I'm enjoying that. The other thing I have to say I'm enjoying is just the countdown to vacation. I'm not really searching around for new things or exciting things. I'm really just in this anticipation of getting to my vacation, and I'm trying to bring myself down into more of a quiet space. So frankly, what I like is winding down. It's not much of a thing to like, but there you are. Put a lid on it. Well, I have discovered the air fryer again. You may remember that I went through an experiment with it, trying to make jalapeno poppers that were keto. And my husband discovered we have an air fryer lid for our Instant Pot. And my husband discovered it a few weeks ago and started air frying vegetables in spices. And boy, are they good. And so I began to realize, yes, that's sitting there. He pulled it out, and of course he didn't put it away because that's my boy's. And I said, well, why am I not using it? Because it is very handy. And so I've been making bacon lately in it and chicken. Now, there is no advantage to me in terms of cooking of using an air fryer. That I can just as easily fry things in healthy oil because I'm keto. I'm not trying to get oil out of my diet, in other words. I need the fat as long as it's a healthy fat like olive oil. However, there's a huge advantage that I was not counting on with the air fryer, and that is put food into it, put the lid on, and just walk away. You don't have to worry about it getting too hot and igniting. You don't have to worry too much about turning things. Yes, my air fryer lid beeps to tell you at the halfway point that you can turn things. Often I don't need to. It gets just as cooked whether I turn it or not. So, you know, there's a huge advantage to getting up in the morning and looking at the chicken breast that's sitting in my fridge and going, well, that's just been sitting there for too long. taking it out, chopping it into pieces because I like it better that way, and just sticking it in the air fryer, setting the air fryer for 16 minutes at 400 degrees, and walking away. And 8 minutes later, if I'm in the kitchen, I'll turn everything when the thing beeps. Otherwise, I just walk away. I come back 16 minutes later. I've got part of dinner already done. I just put it in Tupperware in the fridge, and I can heat it up later. Last night, I did that yesterday morning. Last night, my husband came home and decided we needed chicken nuggets, so he breaded them and fried them again. He was using a recipe that said, yes, take already cooked chicken and do this. They came out really, really well. So I have to admit that right now, we are using the air fryer for a lot of things, just experimenting with it very loosely. I've been enjoying it. I think the biggest lesson of the air fryer right now is that, one, turning it is great, but it is not all that necessary. And two, my air fryer has a much bigger capacity than I was giving it credit for. It doesn't look like it's got a lot of capacity, but if you take a few pieces of bacon and you put them in there and you layer them, by the time it's ready to be turned, they're really tiny. And they've got plenty of room for everybody to lie flat against the bottom if that's what you want. So the capacity is better than it looks. And this is a really handy way to fry things without having to babysit a frying pan full of hot oil. Also, no splatter on the stove. Yeah, that counts for a lot. By the way, in terms of flavor, I think bacon tastes better out of a frying pan. I think chicken nuggets do just great in the air fryer. I think if you roll your veggies like cauliflower florets, if you roll them while they're damp in spices and put them in the air fryer, I think they're just absolutely wonderful. And of course, if you're me and you like to make keto poppers, that is jalapenos with the inside scooped out, filled with cream cheese, and then some bacon and spices in the cream cheese. If you like to make those, the air fryer is great for that. It's kind of a messy prep though. Meanwhile, because it is summer, I continue to carry the recipe for Ketorades so that y'all don't go out there, kill yourselves. On to the blather. Well, you can see one of my son's race pics. I like this picture a lot. For one thing, he looks like he's running. If you look carefully, both his feet are off the ground, which is marvelous. I always wondered if humans do that. Racehorses do. It's a classic series of pictures from early photography showing a galloping racehorse. And there is a moment where all 4 feet are off the ground. It's a spectacular image. So I always wondered if humans do this. Apparently we do. There's my son doing it. Also, when you're us and you're not a really fast runner, although he smoked me. He did 9-minute miles. I don't know if I've ever done 9-minute miles my whole life. I think the closest I got was 10-minute miles. I was doing 13s and I was very happy with those. But in all my pictures from the race, I look like I'm barely walking, which is really embarrassing, but it's the way it looks. He looks like he's really cranking, and he is. And also, I wanted you to see that a typical race picture will have a race logo on it somewhere. These guys did a huge amount of free photos, and they did them all in landscape instead of doing them portrait. So the picture of me at the very top, which is the one half-decent picture of me, which isn't all that great, I trimmed out the logo. But I wanted you to know, if you sign up for a race, it's really common to get free photos. And they will look kind of like this. They may be portrait style. And there's usually a race logo stamped onto the bottom right corner. So I thought you might like to see that as well. But there is the beloved son running his heart out. And he did great. He's now comfortably at about 5 miles. And he's working towards a half marathon. He's considering triathloning. I think he's nuts. But we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, he's a what? He's a what? He's a music man. He's a star. We finally made it through my son's stint on the Music Man at our local kids theater, the Escape Theater Company. It was a wonderful production. It wasn't just good, it was phenomenal. I cannot believe how good the choreography was. I also love the fact they got all the kids on the stage as much as possible. This was my kid's first attempt. He was dancing with a partner, so he got that experience. He did not get to bring his partner forward on the stage and dance in the front. He definitely was back row. He regretted that somewhat, but we got a perfectly good view of him. We were sitting up in a balcony looking right down on him. It was so perfect. I was shocked at how mature he looked, how handsome he looked. And we have been talking a lot about what they said to him that made him work so hard on keeping a smile on his face and being bright and focused. I have to say, this is the last place I was looking for good socialization skills for my son, but he got socialization skills in spades just by learning the skills to be on the stage as a dancer and chorus member. I cannot say enough good things about Escape Theater Company. They were wonderful with him. And it's been really interesting talking to him about what he thinks the play is about, what he thinks the star qualities of the two leads are, both the actors and the characters, and what his role was like, what he was supposed to be portraying. I cannot believe how interesting those discussions have been. Thank you so much, Escape Theater. You did a great job. He aged out of it. They gave him a wonderful medal to celebrate that he was aging out of it. Currently, he's in a leadership class down at Cal State Northridge, and this is kind of keeping him from going through those post-production blues. One wonderful thing, at the last performance, they got the whole cast together and they talked about coping with post-performance blues, because that's very common. Fantastic job. We continue to do the boycotts. I continue to carry the lifelines for our brothers and sisters and others who are LGBTQ+, including the one from our buddies in Canada and from the Trevor Project. These are free. Please remember, wherever you stand on sexuality, nobody deserves to die because they're different from the mainstream. Surely we can do better than that. In the meantime, you can see my community resources for my knitting and crocheting, all the goodies that I like to buy from small producers, the patterns, etc., skills and techniques. You can see my link tree, which is rapidly becoming irrelevant, I think. Also, I wanted to let you know that USC law students have started a hotline that people can call when they have an immigration-related court hearing, but they're afraid to show up in person because now we have immigration people arresting and detaining people at the courthouse while they're trying to pursue due process as they were instructed by the United States government. You can tell from my voice how I feel about this. The law students are willing to help you complete and submit a form called the Motion to Change Hearing Format. This will change your hearing from an in-person hearing to an online hearing, so you don't have to leave your home. You can see the number there. They will do this for you in English or Spanish. I know I said I wanted this to be a quiet space, but I have to tell you, as an American citizen, I think it is my civic duty to protect the rights of other people who are following our laws. So that number is going to be carried there. In the meantime, you can see our calendar for events going on in the Santa Clarita Valley for crafters these are the events I know of, obviously. Obviously, I don't know the ones I don't know of. And then you can see my schedule. Yes, the next thing coming up, we are heading for Ventura on the 28th after I see my last patient. Yay! I have a week off next week. Oh gosh, I can hardly wait. And have the red, white, and blue run at the end of that. CFR 11, of course, October 11th, 2025. Stay tuned for the sign-ups. Minerva gets the last word. And Minerva, you can see she's staring into a mirror. She's being introspective because we have had the House of Silence last weekend. It was very interesting, and I think this is where the idea for this episode came from. Our power went out. For no real reason, our power went out. I'm trying to remember when it went out. I think it was Sunday morning. We had really just gotten up, cooked. Some of us got showers, some of us didn't. And the power went out. And this was not planned by our electric company. It just happened. They didn't know why it happened. They never did tell us. And they told us they'd restore it by 1 p.m. Try 3 a.m. the next morning. So we had this long, silent day in the house. Now, the boys went out because my son had a few social obligations, so that was nice. And my husband drove him. And I was at home and I just couldn't get going because we were up late Saturday night at my son's show. We didn't even get to bed till 1 a.m. Usually I go to bed like 9:30. So this was rather tough. Anyway, so the boys were out and I decided I should go for a run. It was a fairly cool day. And I had a really good run. I think I went out for 3 miles. Just very pleasant hill running by myself. Enjoyed it, wearing the safety stuff, the GoPro and the bear spray and all that, just in case someone had to get nosy, but nobody did. And I came home, and I was aware that the house was profoundly silent. Now, my husband, meanwhile, he turned on our generator at about probably like 10:30 in the morning when we realized the house was not going to have power until at least 1 p.m. As it turned out, not till 3 a.m. the following morning. And I realized when I went out for the run how stupid it was to leave the generator on. Nobody's in the house. The house wasn't hot. We didn't need air conditioning or anything. So I turned the generator off. And when I came back from the run, I noticed the profound silence. And what I also noticed was the peace. The dogs were very mellow. Minerva was very mellow. I was very mellow. And I realized also that we had enough hot water in the water heater. I didn't need to do that to take my shower. So I took a shower. And then I left everything off. And we had this very silent afternoon. And I think Minerva and I both found it very contemplative. And so Minerva is there in the picture being introspective, staring at herself. I guess that's how cats do that. And that's really what happened, that I just went about my business. Yes, I turned on for a short time my Wi-Fi hotspot so I could prep my work for Monday. But on the whole, I just enjoyed the silence. And when the boys came home, we turned the generator on before bed, get lights, pretty much, to finish up any chores around the house, to make sure we had hot water to do the dishes, get the refrigerator cool, to make sure it was cool for a few hours. Then we turned it all off when we went to bed. And it was very nice. And at the same time, there's always a certain amount of stress when this happens. What's going on? And I don't know why. It's very disorienting to lose the power in the house like that, even knowing you have a generator. But I woke up Monday morning and my husband had gotten up and checked the power and it was on. So I woke up with everything running as normal. And we just had this house of silence. And I have to say, I don't regret keeping the generator off. It made absolutely no difference. The house was bright and sunny. The house was not hot. We were all quiet and relaxed. And there's some energy waste we didn't pay for. So Minerva would like to recommend every now and then doing the silence exercise where you just turn things off and let yourself get quiet. And in the meantime, everybody, please remember, we are a community. When we are working to preserve and protect the community, we are preserving and protecting our individualism and our individual rights as well. So everybody, please remember that and stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.